The rain came down hard, soaking the cracked pavement of the gas station parking lot as headlights flickered through the storm. Dominic Blackwell leaned against his sleek black Tesla, the hum of the city muffled under the curtain of rain. He was checking a late-night email on his phone when a blur of white caught his eye. At first, it looked like a ghost, a woman in a wedding dress running barefoot through the rain. Mud splashed up her legs, makeup streaked down her cheeks. She was soaked to the bone, hair plastered to her face, and something about her didn't scream, "Lost bride." It screamed desperate. She stopped just feet from him, chest-heaving, eyes wide. Before he could speak, she whispered between breaths, "Please, I need you to take my virginity." Dominic blinked. He wondered if maybe he had drunk more than he thought at the dinner earlier. The rain poured harder. The girl looked like she might collapse. "I am not joking. I will pay you. Just please do it tonight. If not, I am as good as dead." Her voice cracked and her hands trembled. She wasn't playing games. She wasn't high. She was terrified. Dominic straightened his brows, drawn. He was a man used to control, to logic, to precision. This was chaos in a wedding dress. "Who are you?" "I don't have time. They're going to come for me. Please just let me into your car. You can say no. But please, let me be anywhere but here." He looked past her. No cars, no pursuers. Just a girl in a ruined white dress shaking like she had nothing left to hold on to. "What happened?" She closed her eyes. "I was supposed to get married tonight. I couldn't do it. I ran." "So you decided to find a random guy at a gas station and offer him your virginity?" It sounded ridiculous when he said it aloud. She flinched. "I know how it sounds. But if I go back untouched, they'll force me into that house, into that marriage. But if I am not pure anymore, the contract breaks." Dominic stared at her. She didn't even look 25. Her dress was designer, but her hands were scraped like she had been running for miles. He could smell panic coming off her more than the perfume. He sighed and opened the car door. "Get in before you freeze." She looked at him like he had just saved her life. And maybe in a way he had. "What is your name?" "Eliza." Her voice was small now. Dominic kept his eyes on the road as the car started. He had no idea who she was, what mess she had brought into his night, or why she had picked him of all people. But as the car pulled away from the gas station and the girl shivered in the passenger seat, he knew this was not something he could walk away from. Not now. And neither of them knew that the man she had just begged to sleep with her was not just a stranger. He was Dominic Blackwell, multimillionaire, CEO of Blackwell Tech, and the most emotionally unavailable man in New York. Dominic Blackwell was not the kind of man who invited chaos into his life. Everything about him was structured, polished, and filtered through control. His name appeared on the cover of Forbes twice before his 35th birthday. He built Blackwell Tech from a cramped basement into a billion-dollar software empire with nothing but ruthless precision and sleepless nights. His penthouse overlooked Manhattan like a king watching over his kingdom. Inside, everything was glass chrome and silence. It was a place where no one stayed unless they were paid to. Women came and went, mostly models, all stunning, none of them lasting longer than a weekend. Dominic didn't believe in love, not after watching his mother waste away in heartbreak, abandoned by the man she had once risked everything for. Love was unpredictable, messy, and always ended in weakness. That was the one thing he had sworn never to be: weak. So when he found a barefoot woman in a wedding dress asking him to take something so personal from her, he should have walked away. But he didn't, not because he cared. At least that's what he told himself. The girl Eliza was now asleep in his guest room, wrapped in a thick blanket, her dress drying by the bathroom heater. She had passed out minutes after stepping into the warmth, exhaustion finally overpowering fear. He watched her for a moment longer before closing the door and returning to his living room. He poured himself a glass of bourbon, his mind racing. Who the hell was she really? And what kind of family would force their daughter into marriage like this? He'd seen arranged marriages in corporate circles before, but this felt darker. Eliza Grayson. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place it. He would look her up later, he told himself. For now, he just needed to sleep. Across the city, chaos was unraveling in one of the wealthiest estates on the East Coast. The Grayson family was in uproar. The wedding had been planned for months. The press briefed the contract between the Graysons and the powerful Beaumont family, prepared down to the last clause. But the bride had vanished. Eliza, the youngest daughter of Franklin Grayson, had slipped away from her security detail minutes before the ceremony. Her mother had fainted. Her father had shouted at staff and called every contact he had. But she was gone. Eliza had grown up in a world of private schools, charity galas, and family expectations dressed in diamonds. Her life was planned like a corporate merger. From the age of 15, she had known she would never marry for love. Love was for poor people, her father always said. Her virginity, however, was a business asset. The Beaumonts were old money, powerful, and conservative. They demanded purity, tradition, submission. Eliza was the final move in a long game of power consolidation. She had cried in silence for weeks. The night before the wedding, she had decided she would rather disappear than sign her life away. And now she was lying in the apartment of a man she didn't know, praying that he would not call the police or send her back. What Eliza didn't know was that Dominic Blackwell was not just another Manhattan bachelor. He was one of the city's most guarded men. The tabloids called him the cold CEO, not because he was cruel, but because nothing ever touched him. Nothing ever reached him. Yet now, as he sat staring out the window with a glass of bourbon in his hand, and the rain painting streaks down the glass, he found himself unable to shake the image of her standing in the storm, soaked in rain and defiance. He told himself it was curiosity, maybe even concern, but something deeper had shifted. He could feel it. For the first time in years, Dominic Blackwell felt something close to the beginning of chaos. And strangely, he didn't hate it. Eliza woke to the scent of coffee and silence. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed beneath her was too soft, the sheets too clean, and the air too still. Then it all came back. The rain, the gas station, the man in the suit, her desperate plea. Her fingers clutched the blanket tighter as panic crept back into her chest. She sat up slowly, her head spinning. Her wedding dress had been replaced by an oversized white t-shirt, clearly not hers. It hung off her like a curtain, the fabric brushing her knees. Her heart pounded as she stepped into the hallway. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Manhattan skyline, the city stretching out like a glittering sea of light. Marble floors, clean lines, expensive taste. It felt like a place where no one laughed. Dominic was in the kitchen, dressed in black slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up. He didn't look at her at first, just poured a second mug of coffee and slid it across the island. Drink. Eliza approached cautiously, wrapping her arms around herself. I'm sorry for showing up like that. You didn't have to let me in. I didn't do it out of kindness. I did it because you looked like you were seconds away from collapsing. And I hate cleaning up unconscious strangers. She almost smiled, but there was too much fear behind her eyes. You think I'm crazy. I think you're a lot of things, but mostly reckless. And possibly in danger. Eliza took the coffee, her hands still shaking slightly. I'm not going back. No matter what. Dominic leaned against the counter, watching her. You told me last night that if you lost your virginity, the marriage would be called off. She nodded. The Beaumonts have some outdated traditions. If they find out I'm not, pure the contract voids. My father won't get what he wants. The man I was supposed to marry will walk away, and I'll finally be free. Dominic exhaled slowly. So you decided the only way out was to hand yourself to a stranger. I didn't have another choice. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't plan this. I just ran. And when I saw you, you looked like someone who could say no to the world. I needed that. Dominic looked at her for a long time. You don't know me. You don't even know my name. Eliza stared down at her cup. Maybe that's why I trusted you. Dominic's jaw tightened. His life had been full of women who wanted something from him, attention, status, money. But Eliza hadn't even asked for his name. She just asked for a way out. He turned away and walked to the window. What happens now? I can't go home. They're probably already tracking me. I have nowhere else to go. Dominic's reflection in the glass was sharp, unreadable. You can stay here. For now. Eliza's breath hitched. Are you serious? I'm not in the habit of collecting runaway brides, but until I figure out if I'm harboring a criminal or just a very lost girl, you stay. Thank you. He looked at her finally. But make no mistake, this isn't charity. You don't get to play games in my space. You follow my rules. Eat, sleep, don't touch anything worth more than your soul. Eliza nodded. I understand. Later that night, Eliza wandered the penthouse. The place was too quiet, too perfect. She stood in front of a shelf lined with books and awards. One photo caught her eye. A boy, maybe 7, sitting beside a woman with dark eyes and a warm smile. The frame read, Blackwell Family, 1997. You like snooping. Dominic's voice made her jump. She turned embarrassed. I wasn't, I just saw the picture. She's your mom. Was. Cancer. I was 13. I'm sorry. Don't be. Everyone dies. It's just a matter of when. Eliza frowned. That's a horrible way to look at life. It's a realistic way. Eliza walked toward him, her feet bare on the marble floor. You don't let anyone in, do you? Dominic looked down at her. Letting people in comes with a price. I don't like debt. Eliza tilted her head. And yet you let me in. That was a lapse in judgment. Maybe, or maybe you saw something in me. Or maybe I just didn't want a dead girl bleeding on my seats. Eliza laughed softly, surprising them both. You have a strange way of pretending not to care. Dominic's lips twitched. And you have a strange way of not hiding your desperation. Eliza's smile faded. It's not desperation. It's survival. There's a difference. He looked at her again, really looked. She wasn't like the women he usually dealt with. She wasn't performing. She was barely holding it together. And somehow, that honesty was disarming. You need sleep, and a plan, and food, and probably a lawyer. I'll settle for sleep. He nodded and walked away. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The rain had stopped, but her thoughts were louder than any storm. She didn't know who Dominic Blackwell really was. But for the first time in her life, she felt like someone had looked at her and not seen a pawn. He saw a person. Meanwhile, Dominic sat on the balcony, the city buzzing below. He sipped his bourbon and thought about the girl in the guest room. He told himself he didn't care. But he hadn't kicked her out, and that meant something, maybe too much. The next morning, Eliza woke to find a tray of breakfast on the nightstand, toast fruit, scrambled eggs. She sat up stunned. On the tray was a note. "You'll need strength for what comes next. D." She held the note like it might burn her. He had given her shelter. Now he was giving her care. And she didn't know how to feel about it. She had expected him to use her. Instead, he had protected her. Eliza stepped out into the hall and found Dominic at the dining table with his laptop. "Morning." He looked up briefly. "You're still here. Wasn't sure if you'd bolt again." She sat down across from him. "I told you I don't have anywhere to go." "That's not entirely true. There are shelters, safe houses, fake identities. But you chose here." She met his eyes. "Yes, I chose here." Dominic closed his laptop. "Then I guess we should start figuring out how to make sure no one finds you." She took a breath. "And what if they already are? Then we'll make them wish they hadn't." Eliza didn't know what kind of man sat across from her. But for the first time in her life, she believed someone might actually fight for her. Even if it was a stranger. Even if he didn't admit it yet. Something between them was starting. Something neither of them had planned for. Something neither of them fully understood. But it was there. And it was real. The days passed with a strange rhythm neither of them expected. Eliza stayed tucked away in Dominic's penthouse, moving between the guest room and the balcony, sometimes curling up with a book from his shelf, other times just sitting in silence. She avoided asking questions, and he avoided offering answers. But slowly, the wall between them began to crack. Dominic had meetings during the day. Calls that lasted hours, and staff who came and went, never staying long enough to ask why a barefoot girl in a white t-shirt was living there. At night, they would sometimes sit at opposite ends of the long leather couch, saying little but feeling more. It wasn't comfort, not exactly. It was something stranger. A fragile peace. On the fifth night, Eliza found herself standing in the kitchen while Dominic reheated leftover Thai food. She leaned against the counter watching him. "You don't seem like the kind of guy who eats takeout." "I'm not. But my chef's on vacation and I don't trust strangers in my space." "That includes chefs. So you do everything yourself." "I pay people to do most things, but I heat my own food and clean my own coffee machine. It's the illusion of normalcy." Eliza smiled faintly. "You like being in control. That's not a secret. What happens when something shows up that you can't control?" "I don't let it stay long enough to matter." Her smile faded, and she looked down at her hands. "What about me? Am I one of those things?" Dominic glanced at her, his face unreadable. "You're different." That night over dinner, she told him about her mother. She was 18 when she married my father. It wasn't love, it was business. He made her feel like a queen in public, but at home, he used silence like a weapon. She wasn't allowed to work, wasn't allowed to have friends. When I was 10, she tried to leave him. He had her institutionalized for 6 months. After that, she never smiled again. Dominic sat quietly listening. I was 16 when I realized I was next. My father's legacy wasn't about love or dreams. It was about bloodlines, power appearances. He told me I was born for the deal, not for myself. That's why I ran. I couldn't be another silent woman in his empire. Dominic leaned back, his eyes shadowed. I was 15 when I watched my mother beg my father not to leave us. He did anyway. Left us with debt lies and a reputation that nearly destroyed me. She worked 2 jobs, then got sick, and I had to build everything from nothing. That's why I don't owe anyone anything. Eliza stared at him. I guess we both grew up in houses that looked perfect from the outside, but they were made of glass, and glass cuts you when it breaks. Dominic looked away. What are you really planning? I don't know. I thought losing my virginity would be enough. I thought that one act could free me. But now I don't even know what freedom means. Maybe it's just breathing without fear. He stood and poured another glass of bourbon. You think sleeping with someone will make you free? No. But choosing it for myself might. Dominic stared at her. I don't take advantage of vulnerable women. That's not what I'm asking. Then what are you asking? I don't know. Maybe I'm asking you to remind me what it feels like to be human. For a while they didn't speak. The tension between them was thick, not sexual, not romantic, just raw. Two people who had lived in silence for too long now found themselves hearing echoes of their own pain in each other. Dominic finally said, "You're safe here. But this isn't a solution. It's a pause. What happens when your father finds you? What happens when the Beaumonts realize you're not coming back? I don't know. Maybe they'll cut me off. Maybe they'll send people. Maybe they'll ruin you." Dominic's voice was hard. "I'm not so easily ruined." You say that now. You haven't seen what they're capable of. Then show me. Her voice cracked. Tell me everything. He hesitated, then nodded. My father was a con artist. Left us when I was 15. My mom tried to keep us afloat, but we lost everything. I worked nights, built software in the day. Eventually, Blackwell Tech got noticed. I started making money, built my company from the ground up. I've been in 6 lawsuits, 5 public scandals, and 3 broken engagements. All because people thought they owned a piece of me. But they didn't, because I never gave myself to anyone. Eliza whispered, "And yet you let me in. Maybe that's my mistake. Or maybe that's the first real thing you've done in years." Their eyes locked, and something unspoken passed between them. A recognition. A mirror. Later that night, Eliza stood on the balcony wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the city. Dominic joined her hands in his pockets. "I looked you up. I know who you are now." Eliza turned slowly. "And you're not just a runaway bride. You're the heiress to one of the most powerful families on the East Coast. And you're a billionaire pretending to be a stranger. So now we know. Now we know. What do we do with it?" He looked at her, the city lights flickering in his eyes. "We wait. We breathe. And maybe, just maybe, we fight. Together." Eliza didn't reply. But she didn't walk away either. And that was answer enough. It started with a phone call. Dominic was in his study reviewing quarterly reports when his personal number rang. No one had that number except a handful of people, and none of them would call at midnight. He picked up without hesitation. A voice calm and cold spoke on the other end. "You're harboring my daughter. Return her or face consequences." Dominic didn't speak right away. He knew exactly who it was. Franklin Grayson. He'd only seen the man in newspapers and financial panels, but the tone matched everything Eliza had told him. "You must be confused. I don't harbor people. I'm not in the charity business. I'm not asking Blackwell. You're interfering with a transaction worth more than you'll ever touch. Your empire is nothing compared to what I can destroy." Dominic leaned back in his chair. "Try me." The call ended, but the threat hung in the air. The next morning, his legal team received notice of an anonymous tip accusing Blackwell Tech of corporate espionage. Half his stocks dropped by midday. News outlets began questioning a mystery woman seen on his balcony. Paparazzi parked outside his building. And Eliza watched it all unfold from behind the tinted glass of the penthouse windows. "I should leave. I never meant for this. This isn't your fault. He's using you to get to me. You don't know him like I do. He doesn't stop. He doesn't forgive. I'll survive. Will your company? Will your reputation? Dominic turned to face her. You are not a liability. You're not something I need to hide. But I am. I've been hidden all my life. I was trained to be invisible until someone needed me for a purpose. That's not how I see you. That night, Dominic called a press conference. The entire city watched as he stood in front of cameras, tailored suit, pristine expression. Unreadable. My name is Dominic Blackwell. I built my company from nothing, and I will not be blackmailed by anyone. Rumors have surfaced about a woman staying in my home. Her name is Eliza Grayson. She's not a scandal. She's not a secret. She's someone I chose to protect, because power should never be used to imprison. I don't care if I lose shares. I don't care if I lose investors. I care about what's right. Behind the cameras, Eliza watched with tears in her eyes. No one had ever stood for her before. No one had ever made her feel like more than a pawn. Until now. But the war was just beginning. That same evening, security footage from his building leaked. Photos of Eliza walking barefoot into his penthouse spread across tabloids. Headlines twisted the story into scandal. The runaway bride and the cold billionaire. Was it love or manipulation? Dominic's board held an emergency meeting. His CFO resigned. Sponsorships were pulled. But Dominic didn't flinch. He returned home to find Eliza packing a bag. What are you doing? I'm making it easier for you. I'm walking away before everything burns down. I won't let you leave. You can't stop me. This isn't your fight. It became mine the moment you stepped into that storm and asked me to save you. I didn't ask you to care. No, you didn't. But I do. And that's not something I can shut off. Eliza dropped the bag, her voice trembling. I'm scared. I've never had anyone fight for me before. I don't know how to accept it. Then start now. Accept me. Accept this. Accept that you deserve more than being traded like a signature on a contract. Eliza took a shaky breath. What if it's too late? What if I've already ruined your life? Then let's ruin it together. She stared at him, chest rising and falling, then moved into his arms like it was the only place she'd ever truly belonged. But peace didn't last. The next day, Dominic was served with a subpoena. Franklin Grayson had filed charges for unlawful harboring slander and corporate interference. It was a full assault. His lawyers told him to cut ties. Settle. Release a statement denying Eliza's involvement. Dominic refused. Instead, he scheduled a second press conference. This time, Eliza stood beside him. Cameras flashed as they stepped onto the podium together. Dominic looked straight into the lens. You want a statement? Here it is. Eliza Grayson is not my prisoner. She is not my mistress. She is not my pawn. She is the woman I love. She ran from a marriage designed to break her, and I will fight anyone who thinks they have the right to control her. The room went silent. Eliza felt the world tilt. For a moment, there was no press, no lawsuit, no legacy. Just his voice, and the truth in it. Later, back at the penthouse, Eliza stood in front of the same window she had looked through that first night. Do you really mean it? Every word. You said you never gave yourself to anyone, and I never did, until now. She turned to him, her voice quiet. Then what happens next? Dominic reached for her hand. We fight. We rebuild. We live. And for the first time, we do it on our terms. She smiled small and real. Okay, let's do it. Together. The world did not quiet down after the press conference. If anything, it roared louder. Interviews were requested from every major outlet. Online forums debated whether Eliza was a victim, a gold digger, or a hero. Some called Dominic reckless, others called him romantic. But inside the penthouse, away from headlines and accusations, something softer had begun to bloom. Eliza no longer flinched when the intercom buzzed. She cooked simple meals, sometimes burning the toast, and Dominic ate them without complaint. They spent evenings talking on the balcony, not about lawsuits or families, but about dreams they had never dared to say out loud. One night, Eliza turned to him, the city lights casting a glow across her face. "Do you remember what I asked you the night we met?" He nodded. "I remember every word. I asked you to take something from me. You said no. I didn't say no. I said not like that, and if I ask again now. This time, not out of fear, but because I trust you. Because I want you." Dominic didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "This isn't about freedom anymore. It's about choosing. For the first time in my life, I want to choose this. With you." He kissed her slowly, without rush or demand. It wasn't desperate like their first encounter. It was reverent, as if he was learning every inch of her soul through touch. They moved together in silence, not as two people trying to escape the world, but as two who had finally found something real inside it. The morning after Eliza woke in his bed, sunlight warming her skin, Dominic was already up, shirtless, sipping coffee by the window. She sat up, pulling the sheet around her, and smiled. "This is the first morning I've woken up without dread in my chest." Dominic turned to her. "Get used to it. This is your life now." But it wasn't that simple. A week later, news broke that the charges against Dominic had been dropped. Not because they were false, but because Franklin Grayson had quietly settled out of court. Rumors swirled about backdoor deals and silent threats. Eliza felt a chill when she saw her father's statement online. "We consider the matter closed. Our daughter has made her choice. We wish her the best." It wasn't peace. It was surrender. The kind that comes before something darker. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony, arms wrapped around herself. Dominic joined her, placing a blanket over her shoulders. "You think it's over?" "No, I think he's waiting." "For what?" "For me to slip, for you to fall, for any chance to strike again." "Then we don't give him one." "You say that like it's easy. It's not, but nothing worth keeping ever is." She turned to face him. "What if we're just pretending this can work? What if one day you wake up and regret all of this? What if you stop choosing me?" He reached for her hand. "Then, every day I'll wake up and choose you again. Until I forget how not to." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't know how to be loved." "Then let me teach you. Let me show you that not every touch has to come with a price. Not every promise has to break." Eliza let the tears fall, not from fear, but from something else. Relief, healing, hope. The next morning, Dominic did something he had never done before. He took the day off. No meetings, no calls, no suits. He made breakfast while Eliza laughed at his terrible attempt at pancakes. They watched old movies, danced in the living room, and fell asleep tangled on the couch. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. Until the letter came. A simple envelope with no return address slid under the door sometime during the night. Eliza opened it while Dominic watched from across the room. One sentence typed in black ink. You can run to him, but you still belong to me. Dominic snatched the letter from her hands, his jaw tightening. This ends now. What are you going to do? What I should have done from the beginning. Tell the whole truth. The next day, Dominic released a full statement online. He detailed the arranged marriage, the threats, the contract that treated Eliza like a commodity. He included legal documents that exposed the Grayson family's manipulation and the Beaumonts' history of coercion. He didn't just defend her. He exposed them all. The world responded, not with scandal, but support. Hashtags trended. Survivors of arranged marriages shared their stories. Eliza became a symbol of silent strength. Dominic became more than a CEO. He became a man who stood against legacy for the woman he loved. That night, Eliza sat beside him on the balcony, her hand in his. I was never supposed to be anything but obedient. You are always supposed to be everything. You just needed someone to remind you. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you think this will last? I think it already has. For the first time in their lives, they had stopped running. They weren't hiding. They were building something new, something true, something worth every risk they had taken. 3 months later, the world had moved on, but their story remained. The tabloids found new scandals, new heiresses, new billionaires to chase. Blackwell Tech recovered and grew stronger, bolstered by Dominic's brutal honesty and refusal to play politics. Investors returned, the board stabilized, and his name became not just synonymous with wealth, but with integrity. Eliza didn't return to her family estate. She never would. Instead, she opened a small bookstore cafe tucked away on a quiet street in Brooklyn. It had been her dream since she was a child, a place filled with pages and peace. The sign above the door read, "Paper and Light," and inside every book was hand-picked, every table carefully arranged. It was nothing like the ballrooms she had grown up in. It was better. On opening day, Dominic arrived early. No security, no driver, just him and a bouquet of wildflowers. You know, most people would have started a fashion brand or skincare line. Eliza smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. Most people never had to run barefoot through the rain to find themselves. He kissed her forehead. This suits you. You suit me. As the day unfolded, friends arrived, customers wandered in, and laughter echoed through the small space. Eliza moved through the room with quiet grace, and Dominic watched her with a kind of awe he still hadn't shaken. That night, they walked home, hand in hand, their steps unhurried. No reporters followed. No threats lingered. The storm had passed. On the rooftop of the penthouse under a sky freckled with stars, they sat on a worn blanket with 2 mugs of tea. Do you regret anything? She asked, her voice soft. Dominic shook his head. Not even the chaos. Not even the subpoenas. Not even the headlines. Without them, I wouldn't have found you. And you? She asked, looking at him. Do you think you've changed? I think I finally remembered what it means to feel. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I think I finally learned what it means to be chosen. Really chosen. Not for legacy, not for bloodlines, just for me. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, and placed it in her hand. It wasn't a grand gesture. No speeches, no flash, just a quiet offering. I don't want to own you. I don't want to save you. I just want to spend every day choosing you, again and again. Her hands trembled as she opened the box. A simple gold ring with a single diamond. Elegant, honest, real. Yes, she whispered, a single word full of meaning. And in that moment, beneath the stars, surrounded by silence, they knew the war was over. The pain, the fear, the running, it had all led them here. to a place where love wasn't a cage or a game, but a choice made freely, every day, over and over. The kind of love that didn't need permission, didn't need approval, just two people who refused to give up on themselves or each other. When you dare to love beyond fear, beyond rules, beyond the scars you carry, you don't just find someone who completes you. You find someone who reminds you that you were never broken, just waiting for the right hands to hold the pieces.